Wait, so we're live now?
Yeah, we're literally...
That's amazing.
We're live right now.
Okay.
Yeah, see, there we go. We're live. Cool. Hi, welcome to Monster Mash, episode 1, sort of.
Yeah, sort of.
So here's the tea. I did an episode last week where I just, listened to music and talked about it a little bit, but that got copyrighted real fast, and I was like, I don't want to do that every week. That's stupid. So, this show has now become a, conspiracy theory, true crime monster thing. It's still called Monster Mash. It's just a completely different thing. And I have a co-host now.
Hello, I'm Lindsay. Yeah, murder. We're gonna be talking about that.
Yeah, also I hope that I have the mic turned up literally all the way, so if you can't hear this, I'm so sorry.
Or if you can really hear this.
Yeah, or if you have to, turn your volume down to 1 and put your phone in another room, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But basically the premise for this week's episode is, hometown murder, some murders that happened, where we used to live before moving to New York. And, I have one that I, literally heard about growing up, in elementary school and in high school, which seems ridiculous, but, And, it got picked up by, news outlets last year. It got picked up by the New York Times, which seems so weird for this little podunk town in Texas.
And what year did this originally happen in?
It happened in 1985.
Okay, so that's very late. They're incredibly late to this.
Yeah, they're really late to it. I don't know how it, resurfaced again. That's so random that it just resurfaced again in 2018 after people in this town have been talking about it since the day it happened. So, I guess I'll start.
Yeah,
I'll start with the murder, because I've already kind of been running with it.
Yeah, go.
Okay, so, the people in this story... The couple is Joe Bryan and Mickey Bryan, and it also kind of involves, I'll mention him later, but Mickey's brother, who I will refer to as Blue because I think that's his last name, and I'm too lazy to actually learn his name, so we're just going to call him Blue.
That's a mood.
So, basically, what happened that started this all going off. Mickey's body was found October 15th, 1985. Her body was across the length of, their bed, and her nightgown was up and over the top half of her body. And she was naked from the waist down. She had been shot 5 times, and there was blood on the walls, on the ceiling. There was blood, everywhere. This is very depressing. I'm very sorry.
I mean, we did decide to turn this into a murder show.
Yeah,
so.
true. Okay.
Warning, it's depressing.
Hopefully there will be comedic commentary at some point, but I don't know. Maybe it's just
We'll get there. We'll get there.
So, Joe Bryan, her husband, was arrested and charged with her murder. Obviously, not in 1985, but, later when the trial happened, he was arrested and charged. But... literally, he didn't do it. I'm just gonna say that. It's a fact. He did not do this. Because once you actually read the case, none of this shit makes sense. It's all, first of all, none of it is, actual evidence.
It's not possible.
It's all circumstantial, and it's literally not possible for him to have physically been there when she was killed. So, let me start talking about where this gets all fishy. So... Joe was in Austin, Texas, which is 120 miles away from Clifton, Texas, for a conference when Mickey was murdered. And people were able to place him at the conference the morning that the body was found. So what they're proposing is basically Joe was in Austin. He drove back 120 miles to Clifton, Texas. And then he murdered his wife. He left basically no evidence. Drove back to Austin, Texas, another 120 miles, with time to clean up and attend the conference the next morning. Which, none of that makes any sense. Why the fuck why would he not murder her before he left for the conference? Why would he choose to have this He could have just bought movie tickets. He didn't have to go literally to Austin, to Clifton, to Austin. It just, like, none of it makes any logical sense, and the timeline makes no sense at all. So that's what they literally proposed, and the jury somehow found him guilty.
Okay, for the person that just talked about Ted Cruz, we will get there eventually.
Oh my god.
Not
that's
in
my
this
stepdad.
episode.
So that's my stepdad. Hi, Tim. Literally, we're gonna do, like, a whole episode on Ted Cruz.
Yeah, we decided this yesterday. We're gonna do a whole episode on Ted Cruz being the Zodiac Killer.
Yeah, Ted Cruz is the Zodiac. I mean, it's obvious. And he was also born in Canada, so come on.
Only the Zodiac Killer can be born in Canada.
Only the Zodiac Killer. Okay, so this case also gets weird when you look into the actual evidence that they found. So one of the police officers who investigated found a cigarette butt on the floor of the Bryans' kitchen, and neither of them smoked. And he claimed that he tracked it in on the bottom of his boot. He literally claimed that he tracked in a cigarette butt on the bottom of his boot into this crime scene. Like, and that's obviously evidence of a break-in, if anything. Maybe it's not evidence of a murder, but it's definitely evidence that someone other than those two were in that house.
I mean, like, also, what... They could have at least done, like, a DNA test on it.
Exactly.
And, like, if they investigate the person and it turns out it's just some random dude that had nothing to do with it, guess what? He's just some random dude. But
Yeah.
But, like, evidence is evidence.
The fact that they just didn't even... Because there was DNA on it, and they still, I believe, they still have the cigarette in evidence, but it still hasn't been DNA tested. And it just... Like, I don't even know why you would lie about that. Why you would just be like, oh, you mean that evidence that we found? No. It wasn't evidence.
It's like tracking blood on your boot.
Yeah.
Just be like, oh, that's a coincidence. There's so much blood everywhere, you know?
Yeah. And another thing that happened, so there was a man who investigated this case, like, on his own. But I think he's an actual reporter. I'll have to, like, look that up later. Don't take me at face value on this.
The motto of this is going to be, don't fact check us.
Yeah, don't fact check. Just
or sue.
Yeah, don't sue or fact check. Copyright. So, a guy named Leon Smith, he found that even if he picked up a cigarette butt with his boots, it would only get carried about 1 or 2 steps. So, even if it had been tracked in on this police officer's boot, it still would have had to come from inside the house.
Yeah, or around the house. Like,
Yeah.
it would have had to come on the premises, so...
Yeah, it would have had to be in the crime scene.
Who made that man a cop?
I honestly, no idea how this man is a cop. And so another piece of evidence that they found, which is, again, DNA evidence that they just fucking...
God.
that they just didn't care about. They found a palm print on the headboard of their bed where Mickey's body was found, and it didn't belong to Joe or Mickey. But they just kind of were like, nah, that's weird. Some guy or girl put their hand on this headboard. No reason.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Okay. So we could already, like, establish the police department as being dumb.
Already. Immediately out the gate. The police department has no idea.
Especially because they're just now, like, looking into it. Like, really?
Yeah, it just makes no sense. And the only piece of evidence that they convicted Joe on was, first of all, it was circumstantial. Second of all, it very easily could have been planted. And let me just tell you what this piece of evidence was. So, Blue, again, this is the brother-in-law of Joe. So I hope that this doesn't get super confusing. I'm trying to make it really simple, but, you know. Blue found in the trunk of Joe's car a flashlight with blood splatter, like, on the lens of the flashlight. And he was like, oh, well, that's definitive evidence that, you know, that Joe did it. And here's the deal. The blood, yes, the blood was Mickey's, but so Joe claimed he had never moved the flashlight. Joe said that flashlight was always in the bedroom, and I didn't move it. And he was literally out of town when all of this happened. And again, he drove Austin, Clifton, Austin.
It doesn't make sense.
And he, for some reason, decided to leave the flashlight in the trunk of his car after he killed his wife. Like, why wouldn't he leave the flashlight in the house? Why would he have needed the flashlight to see around his own house? None of it makes any sense. And, of course, literally they said, like, well, why are your fingerprints on this flashlight? And he was like, because it's my flashlight. Because I owned the flashlight, but I did not move the flashlight.
Yeah, so it was already, like, right there
Yeah.
on the nightstand, right? So the blood would have gotten onto it.
It would have gotten on it.
And then could have just been planted in the car really easily.
Exactly. It could have been planted by the brother-in-law. If he had gloves on, he could have just put it in the trunk of the car.
In conclusion, police department dumb.
Yeah, in conclusion, Clifton Police Department in 1985, I don't know about now. They're
probably better now.
Yeah. No clue.
Don't sue.
No clue what they were doing in 1985. None of it makes any sense. Like, oh my god. So, the only evidence that they found that they could use against Joe was the flashlight. They used it against him, obviously, and got him convicted. And here's how I think that they got him convicted. This is another part of this investigation that's just really weird and shouldn't have happened at all. So, there was a rumor that was circulating that Joe was gay.
Uh-oh.
And, of course, in 1985, in conservative Texas, small town Texas, a town that has like 12 churches, that's probably not a good thing, especially for a jury of your peers to know about. And it would probably bias them against you pretty hard.
Yeah.
So they're basically claiming that they found a Chippendale pinup calendar. If you don't know what that is, just have fun and look it up, you know? Just look up what a Chippendale pinup calendar is. You'll have a good time. So they found it in the trunk of the car, and Joe claimed that it was a gag gift for a single friend, and like that was it. Like that was the reason why it was in his car. But the police, and I'm assuming, I don't know, like other people who saw it took it as like, he's gay and Mickey found out his secret and he decided to murder his wife. The end. Even though it's still logically and honestly in reality it makes no sense. Like the timeline.
The only thing they're really banking on is the flashlight, which is like not great.
Yeah, and here's another thing about the flashlight that I didn't mention. So they did blood splatter analysis in the room and on the flashlight, and the guy who did it claimed at first, notice I'm saying at first because he changed his opinion on this, or he said that the flashlight would have been in the room, it would have, like, it was obviously from the path where she was shot and all this stuff and blah blah blah. Later, after the trial, I don't remember exactly what year this came out, but he said that it was wrong. That his conclusion about the flashlight, about the blood splatter, it was all wrong. He, like, took that back, that couldn't have been used as evidence anymore. But it was the only evidence that they used against him. So the one piece of evidence they had, the person who found the evidence is claiming that it was wrong. And this guy is still in prison. Joe Bryan is still in prison.
It's been like 30 years.
It's been 31 years. I think now it's been 31. He's still in prison for this murder. And I've said this so many times, but the only piece of evidence that they convicted him on, it can't be evidence because they said that it was wrong, that what they concluded was wrong. And there's even more weird stuff about this case. So basically, some neighbors of Mickey and Joe claimed to have seen a peeping Tom looking in the window. And the police just didn't follow up about that. They didn't investigate into that. They didn't like, re-question the witnesses. They didn't re-question the neighbors. They were just like, I don't think so, and then left it. Which is, again, bad police work. I think that a lot of these small-town murder cases, a big thing is that the police departments just either don't know how to handle cases like this because it never happened, or they don't want to cause a panic and they want to arrest someone really quick, so they just go for the first person that they can plant evidence on.
I feel like it's a little bit of both. Like,
Honestly.
I think that, like, they just want to arrest someone as soon as possible, or they just, like, what do they do? Okay, what do they do? like, maybe they just are used to doing nothing, but just wearing a police badge, and they're like,
See,
well,
I think that maybe they're kind of lazy, and they
Maybe
just
they're
don't
kinda
want to.
lazy.
Yeah, and maybe they don't, because I bet they like not having to do a ton of work about, like, murders and all this stuff. So when it does happen, they're like, oh, fuck, we gotta do the paperwork, and we have to go investigate. So they probably want to get it over with. So they do shit like this, crappy police work, and they get someone indicted who literally had nothing to do with this crime. So, yeah, Peeping Tom didn't look into it. Nothing wrong with that to the police. No suspect behavior there.
And also for such a, like, the case is completely based on this flashlight, which was later debunked, and he still got, like, 99 years in prison
Yeah, he got
or something
99
like that.
years.
It's
He
like,
got 99
whoa, your case is really shaky
Yeah.
here. And he got 99 years?
99 years twice, because the case... So, I don't know all the terminology, but basically the case was... Like, something was wrong with the case, so it went back to trial, and they reconvicted him again for 99 years. And it's like, wait, what? How stupid is this jury? No offense to anybody who was on the jury, but how dumb are you to, like, convict this man on all circumstantial evidence, first of all. Nothing else linking him to the crime other than, like, it was his wife and it was his flashlight.
He owned a flashlight and he had a wife.
He
He's
killed
a murderer.
her. He's a murderer. And he was possibly gay, which he isn't, I am assuming. This is probably just all something that the police said to get the jury to not like this guy so that they would convict him. So that doesn't even have, like, any truth to it. And it was still what he was convicted on. And another thing that happened before this murder actually took place. So 4 months before this, in June of 1985, there was a 17-year-old girl found in some cedar trees on the west side of Clifton. She was found naked. She had marks on her wrist from being bound, and she had been sexually assaulted, and I believe the cause of death was asphyxiation. Can't say things, but you know, she stopped breathing.
Yeah, as you
Yeah, and she was found, and that case is still to this day unsolved. And they didn't investigate the Mickey case as if it had anything to do with it. 2 women, like, sexually assaulted. Because remember, Mickey was found with her nightgown pulled up over the top of her body. The bottom half of her body was naked. Like, her underwear were gone. Not, like, gone, but, like, they weren't on her, you know what I mean? And they just didn't have the thought that maybe these 2 were possibly connected, or that maybe they weren't even connected, but still, it would have been a good idea to check it out. And I feel so bad for the family of that 17-year-old girl, because it's still unsolved. Like, the police department just did jack shit about that case.
Was that in the same town?
Same town, yeah.
Okay, so it's a small town. Nothing ever happens in a small town.
Nothing.
2 people die.
In the span of 4 months. That's pretty high.
And, like, they're both women.
Yeah.
They both are, like, kind of like, their bodies are laid in similar fashions. And they don't even, like, kind of connect the dots. Like, did they not learn from the first case at all? They're like, oh, well, you know.
It just makes no sense. And the, like, this girl who was murdered, even if it wasn't connected, why did they just, like, quit investigating it? Like, why did they just not care about the fact that this 17-year-old girl had been sexually assaulted and murdered? Because even the family, in an interview that they did, the family of the younger girl, they said that, like, the police department just did not care. Like, they just didn't give a shit about this case. Which, again, leads me to believe that this whole Joe Mickey thing, that leads me to believe that they probably didn't care about this case either. So they just... And here's another thing that I'm kind of miffed about the police department. They probably were thinking, oh, shit, this is the second murder in the span of 4 months. People are going to be looking at us.
Yeah,
and
pressure.
wanting us... Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on you now. And you're a small-town police department. You never have this happen. So you probably want to arrest someone pretty quick to at least get people off your back about the shitty work that you're doing.
Yeah, I think that what they did is, like, they got people off their back by, like, arresting someone pretty quickly, and then they just were like, well, how about we just not follow up now?
Yeah, how about we just leave that where it is? It's all good.
We'll just hope that scared the murderer.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Maybe he won't strike again in the next 4 months. We'll see. We'll play it by ear.
Yeah. And here's another weird thing. I'm, like, reading an article that was written about this, by the way, like, while I'm doing this. So that's why I keep on going, like, oh shit, there's more stuff that I forgot about. So...
As you do.
Yeah, so I believe after the murder of Mickey, yeah, there were 2 men who were found at I think it was a Ford dealership, like at a car thing. But they had a van that had been painted white recently, like extremely recently, been repainted green, no license plates on the van. The 2 men, the 2 men apparently had records, and they just didn't think that maybe these 2 men who had criminal records, who were in town, who had a van that had no license plates, had anything to do with this case. Like,
and it's like a small town, so it's like anyone with a criminal record,
yeah,
you want to look into.
Yeah, honestly, they should have been investigating any person in that town who had a record of sexual assault, and, I mean, obviously they wouldn't have a, like, track record with murder on it, but, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They should have looked into people with criminal records that had similar things happen to these 2 crimes, like the sexual assault, the targeting women, and they assumed that it was a burglary gone wrong in the case with Mickey because her jewelry was missing. So, also, here's another reason why Joe Bryant obviously did not do this. Why would he take her jewelry? Why would he take his wife's jewelry? Like, what, to sell it? Yeah. He owned it. Yeah. Like, then it just makes no sense why he would come into his own house, smoke a cigarette that he had never smoked a cigarette, smoke a cigarette, leave the butt on his kitchen floor, murder his wife, take her jewelry, take the flashlight out of his room.
Rob your own house.
Yeah, rob your own house, plant some evidence in your own car. Like that. I mean, I'm sorry, I can't even talk. I'm so, like, caught up in how stupid this is. Even if you're listening to this now, you have to admit, that sounds so ridiculous. Like, there's no way that happened. And this man was found guilty and is still in prison. I believe he's 78 now. They took away 31 years of this man's life.
Over a flashlight.
Over a flashlight in the trunk of his car that they found to be, like, inconclusive. Like,
it's like a shame because I feel like back in the day if they would have thought about the brother more of Mickey.
Oh, for sure.
If they would have, like, investigated, like, his property, more stuff like that, they probably could have found some interesting stuff.
For sure, Blue. So here's another fucking thing that nobody apparently seemed to care about at Clifton Police Department. So the brother-in-law, Blue, there was $300,000 for Mickey's life insurance that ended up going to the brother-in-law. It didn't go to Joe. It went to the brother-in-law. So again, the husband who has no motive, yet the brother-in-law who has a lot of motive, $300,000 of motive, and he's, like, they didn't
They
look
didn't even
into
think
it.
about
They didn't even investigate him as a suspect. And and he had the keys to Joe's car. What?
Oh my god.
What?
Wait, he had the keys
He
to
had
his...
the keys to the car.
Okay, yeah, no, we figured it out. We solved it. I think
We
case
solved this
closed.
case.
Hey, Clifton.
Yeah, hey, we solved this case in, not even 25 minutes, because in the first, 3 minutes, I think we already knew that it was not Joe Bryan.
I think before.
Yeah, I think even before we started talking about it, we knew that it wasn't this guy. So, yeah, the brother-in-law, who had a lot to gain from this murder, wasn't investigated. He had the keys to the car where the flashlight was found in the trunk. But, he totally didn't plan it. Nah.
No, he couldn't, because he's the brother.
Yeah, he's the brother. He couldn't have planted that flashlight in the car easily with a pair of gloves and the keys to the car, which he had. No!
My god.
Yeah, so that's and again, this is a case that I heard about. I obviously didn't hear all the details when I was growing up, but I heard about it in elementary school. I heard about it in high school. I had teachers who were teaching at the school when this all happened. And Joe Bryan, by the way, was a high school principal in Clifton. There's only one high school in Clifton, so but he was the principal. So I had teachers who would talk about this case, and they literally knew him. And they even were like, he couldn't have done it. He didn't do it. I don't think that really anybody in Clifton believes that Joe Bryan actually killed his wife. I genuinely don't think that you could find, 10 people in town that believe that he killed her.
Now, here's, the tea, right? Do you think there could have been some, bribery?
I mean, with $300,000 in your pocket.
That's a lot of money to have gains.
Yeah, and maybe Blue, the brother-in-law, didn't want them looking into the fact that he just got $300,000 from this life insurance from his sister's murder.
It's very possible that, he paid off the cops, they swept it under the rug for him.
Yeah, they were like, oh, I tracked in that cigarette butt. Oh, that flashlight.
It's just a theory.
Yeah, please don't take any of this as more than just theories about what actually happened. Unless I say that I'm, reading an article about the case, just remember that this is just, us thinking about what probably happened. Probably happened.
Probably.
Well,
we'll leave it there.
Air quotes.
Air quotes.
Air quotes around probably.
Don't sue.
Yeah, don't sue. That's the main
don't
thing.
Cease and desist. Don't do
But-
anything to...
Yeah, and... So, yeah.
Ruin our lives.
Yeah. God, that case is just so ridiculous. There's no way that Joe Bryan, I'm gonna keep saying his name because you should, write to the Texas, state and be like, yo, let this dude out of prison.
We're gonna break him out, guys.
Yeah, we're gonna break Joe Bryan out of prison. I think he's actually in Huntsville. I think that's where he's in prison, but... Yeah,
we all show up to the prison with spoons. All of us. We figure out what cell it is. We go outside the cell. We all dig for 3 weeks.
Yeah, let's make a tunnel, you guys.
Let's make a tunnel for him. He won't know it's coming, but he'll be like, "What's that scraping sound outside?"
Tunnel for Joe Bryan.
Tunnel for Joe. We're starting that movement.
I hope that if Joe Bryan ever listens to this, I just want him to know I feel really bad for you, man. I'm so sorry. You obviously. And if you did commit this crime, props to you, I guess, because fuck, driving,
props to you and,
yeah.
gas money and,
yeah, props to you for gas.
Driving at 120 miles per hour, that, I can't even drive at, 60.
Driving...
Without getting scared.
Yeah. Good lord.
You are fearless.
Yeah, and here's the thing that also makes me feel really bad for Joe Bryan. Literally, he got called the morning of this conference to be told that his wife was brutally murdered, and then the police are like, we think you did it. And he's like, yeah, but I didn't do it, though. I wasn't there. And he literally wasn't there. And then the police were still like, yeah, but you did it, though. And then he got arrested and in jail for fucking 31 years. That is the worst. Like,
he's like told he'll never like leave jail.
Yeah, he's never. I mean, I hope he gets to get out, but even at this point, he's 78. What the fuck is he gonna do?
We tunnel for him. Because he can't tunnel himself.
Yeah, he can't break out of prison himself, you guys. He's 78 now.
He's 78, and he probably didn't murder her. Well, we don't know, but he probably didn't. So I don't think that he has, like, the morale to,
You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and say it. He for sure didn't murder her. Like,
it doesn't make sense.
None of...
There's other things that make more sense than that. And they picked the most, like, unconventional one.
Yeah, there's so many different... like, the Peeping Tom. They could have looked into him as a suspect. Or they could have just tried to investigate that lead more. Even if it got them nowhere, at least they would have investigated it.
And since it's a small town, they could have just gone through the sexual assault records of all the people
Exactly.
in town. People who have, like, you know, indecent exposure charges. Like, things like that, like, could have given them, like, a lead.
Mm-hmm.
But... instead, they're like, well, this flashlight.
Instead, they were like, we don't want to do the work, and we're gonna convict the husband.
They're like,
Literally,
look at the flashlight.
Yeah, I like to imagine that the lawyer in court was like, it's always the spouse, and then the jury was like, oh, yeah, you've got a point, and then they just fucking convicted.
I just like to think that everyone in court just spaced out for an hour till, like, someone just said, well, there was a flashlight with blood on it.
And then they were all like... like, everybody in the courtroom gasped.
Yeah.
And then they convicted him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was the story of Joe Bryan and how he got convicted for a murder that he for sure did not commit. And now we're going to talk about Jimmy Hoffa. Well, I'm not going to talk about it,
Yeah,
really.
I'm going to talk about Jimmy Hoffa. I'm from Detroit. This is not small town. This is, like, everyone knew about this. Like, there's possible connections with the president being involved in his disappearance. Like, I am not kidding. And it's, like, the most solid theory. We'll get there.
We'll get there.
Like, the most solid theory is that Nixon wanted him dead. I'm pretty sure.
Honestly,
All right. So, here's the gist of it. So, Jimmy Hoffa, actually, let's start here. Jimmy Riddle Hoffa. His middle name is Riddle, so he's meant to go missing.
Honestly.
We're gonna get there. But in the 70s, specifically 1975, Jimmy Hoffa went missing. He was in charge of kind of like the Teamsters, like labor union stuff. Like, he would like raise minimum wage for everyone loved this man. But
and then
well, oops, he's gone. Well, okay, it wasn't that simple. So pretty much the Teamsters were like a really big deal at the time. They were controlling like about 90% of transportation in the United States. And everything was pretty good until there was like a turf war. And Jimmy Hoffa, being Jimmy Hoffa, decided, hey, you know what I can do about my rivals?
Oh, God.
He gets in contact with the mob.
Yeah, that's never a good start to a story.
Yeah, like, that's never... Like, here's a fact about the case. Everyone knows that the trigger was at least pulled by someone in the mob. Like, the mob killed him, but who and, like, why and how?
And I feel like whenever the mob is involved in a case, it's like...
The mob did it.
Yeah, it's like the mob probably definitely had something or all to do with it.
Yeah, and his body was never found, so that's also a red flag, because the mob is very good at disposing of things. Let's be honest.
They're very good at making things go missing.
Yeah, so... he contacted the mob and was like, hey, can you get rid of the other side for me? You know, like my rivals and stuff. And it kind of led to, like, the mafia owning him. Like, pretty much. Like, he was indebted to them.
Yeah, that's also not a great start to a story about a man who goes missing.
Yeah, so he couldn't really live his life freely. Like, pretty much the mob, like, had that over his head.
They also apparently have the power to make it all go away.
Yeah, like, if he, like, makes one wrong decision, like, he's dead.
He's gone.
And so we can kind of assume that happened.
Yeah.
But the reason why, like, this was such a big thing is because he was so public. Like, once again, the president loved him. Like, everyone loved him, and then he was just gone, and everyone was like, where's his body? Like,
Yeah, well, it's weird. It's just gone.
and they're still investigating today.
Yeah, it's still an ongoing investigation.
Yeah. Like, they recently tore down a barn looking for him. But, okay. Yeah, Hoffa was still loved by everyone in the Union after the mob thing, by the way.
They were still like, I love that guy, though.
But, like, we love him. So, like, apparently the relationship with the mob actually was pretty stable throughout, like, the 50s and the 60s, but then once it got into the 70s, that's when, like, big yikes. So, Hoffa was arrested in 1967 for bribery and mail fraud. And the mob started to become a little less fond of him because the cops were all looking at him.
That's a big thing about being in the mob or being owned by the mob. You can't draw attention to it.
Which, by the way, even after being arrested, the people in the Union loved him. They're like, yeah, Jimmy Hoffa,
like,
mail fraud.
Yeah, I don't care about what happened with the cops. I love that guy.
But he was sentenced to 13 years in prison. And instead of, like, staying in prison for 13 years, Nixon, the president, got him out of jail in 3 years.
Jesus,
with a lot of money.
Yeah, wow. The president of the United States was like, this criminal? No. Get him out of there.
And the reason, this is the craziest part to me, the reason he wanted him out of jail was so he could be in charge of the Teamsters again.
After being arrested.
For, like, mail fraud and bribery.
He was literally like, I still want that guy to be in charge of this organization.
And there were, like, some suspicions at the time that he had connections to the mob originally, and, like, people were still like, whatever, like, he's cool.
It's fine.
But, like, it was never really confirmed, and the mob was getting really nervous that with the arrest, they might have interrogated him, and that he might have said something.
Yeah.
And so, the important thing that happened right after he got out of jail is that, the mob and the Teamsters had, like, this thing where they had, like, a pension fund for, the Teamsters. And so the Teamsters, would give money from the pension fund, which was, like, a really bad thing, right? They would take money from the pension fund and give it to the mob.
Oh my god. That's not great.
It's not great. And so they, like, the mob expected their payments. Like, that was how he was getting rid of his debt to them. And right after he got out of prison, the pension fund was robbed for hundreds of millions of dollars.
Holy shit.
And then 2 weeks later, Jimmy Hoffa went missing.
Wow, gee, I wonder what happened. That's so weird.
Yeah, that's so weird, right?
So random.
Yeah, so random.
Just a big coincidence.
So, we're about to get into some fun mob names.
Oh my god, the best part.
Yes.
The mob names, yes.
So, the day of his disappearance, he was going to, I think it was, like, Mac's Red Fox restaurant. It's in Lake Orion, Detroit. Like, it's somewhere in Michigan.
It's somewhere in
like,
Detroit,
it's near there.
We're not painting y'all a map here, okay?
We're not painting out a map. Don't fact check me. Just trust me, I'm from there.
Yeah, just trust
Also,
us.
it doesn't exist anymore. So don't look
Yeah, so don't look for it.
Don't look for it, you won't find it. So, Hoffa went to meet with Giacalone and Provenzano.
Oh, man.
I do know that Provenzano's nickname was Tony Pro, which everyone's like, oh yeah, Tony Pro did it. Like, that's, but it gets a little weirder than that.
Yeah, it gets kind of messy.
It gets a little messy. So, they were both mobsters. He was meeting with them at 2 p.m. at the restaurant. Later at 2:15, Hoffa called his wife saying that no one showed up to the meeting. And was, like, ranting about it to her. Like, kind of being like, oh, they stood me up. But, like,
wow.
I hate that. And, witnesses said that they saw Hoffa get in a Mercury Marquis with 3 other men, including a driver who was apparently a close friend of Hoffa's named O'Brien.
That's what's happening here.
And he was also confirmed to have been in the car by police dogs and DNA tests. Like, his hair was found in the car.
He was,
there
like,
was blood.
for sure in the car.
There was blood in the car, which I believe the driver later tried saying that was blood from salmon, but then they were like,
Oh,
no,
that's human?
That's literally his blood. Like, it was a DNA test and everything. And, so the two individuals he was gonna meet with, Giacalone and Provenzano, were later confirmed to be playing cards in Jersey at the time. But police were like, why are you in Jersey? Like, Hoffa had notes on his desk and stuff that I believe, anyways, don't fact check.
No fact checking here.
That had, like, their names on it and, like, when he was gonna be meeting them. And even, like, the wife was saying that he was acting weird that day. And obviously we can assume he's dead. Like,
yeah.
he's dead. There are some theorists that think that he ran to South
America.
People think that he ran to South America with a go-go dancer, but I don't know.
Honestly, I kind of hope that that's what happened. I know it's not what happened, but it'd be so funny.
Not what happened.
It'd be so funny. Imagine if he's just like living it up in South America with some go-go dancer. After being loved by all these people, he's like, it's time to retire. And he just fucking ran.
He's like with a go-go dancer, he's just chilling, and all the mobsters
well, now
are
she's
just
an
like...
old go-go dancer, but still, they're...
now she's probably not one anymore.
Yeah, she's probably not a go-go dancer anymore if this is what happened, which it's definitely not. But...
Okay, so that's kind of like the last time he was seen.
Yeah.
That's like the very last time he was seen was being... Like, he
taken away in a car.
Taken away in this, like, Mercury Marquis.
Which has his blood in it.
Yeah, which has his blood and his hair in it. And the driver, O'Brien, denies being there.
What?
But here's the funniest part. Hoffa's son, when questioned by police, asked, hey, was O'Brien involved in his disappearance? His own son ran out of the room when being questioned.
Oh my god.
They were like, hey, was O'Brien involved? And then he just, like, got up and bolted.
What the fuck?
And then he didn't say anything else.
What?
Like, it's
you can
like,
do that when you're being questioned by the police? You can just get up and walk out?
I don't think you can. Like,
can you imagine if you were being questioned by the police and you just stood up and walked out of the room? You'd get shot.
They'd, like, tase you at least.
Yeah. Oh my god.
But the main theory that everyone thinks, which I don't know about, but I definitely can see it, is that during his arrest, it's possible that the investigators found out that the mafia had access to the pension fund, which is incredibly illegal.
Yeah.
Like, so bad.
Very, very illegal.
And if it made it back to the mafia, that wouldn't go so well. For Hoffa. And the country wouldn't want the mafia involved with the Teamsters, because they were, like... controlling 90% of transportation.
Yeah.
Like, wages, like, stuff like that. Like, that is so
That's
bad.
a lot.
And it would lose, like, the mafia would lose so much money from that, right? So,
yeah. Especially if they were just, like, robbing it every now and then.
Yeah. Like, hundreds of millions of dollars they would be losing.
Yeah.
So it would have been really easy for them to be like, well, I don't want to risk this. You know,
off
like,
him, you know?
Boom.
Yeah. Just off this one guy and then you're good. Then the police aren't gonna be after you anymore.
And then, like, there's a theory that O'Brien was the one that pulled the trigger, because he complained about Hoffa not giving him a higher position in the Teamsters.
Wow.
Because he was, like, the driver, you know? Like, everyone...
He was just being petty.
Like, he was, like, petty. But, like, there's so much... There's more.
There's gotta be more to it than that.
There's, like, more reasons to kill someone, you know?
Yeah, especially to kill someone who is the leader of this organization that has very obvious ties to the mob. Like...
But, what makes, like, that theory kind of credible is because the guy that replaced Hoffa as being the leader of Teamsters, his name is Frank Fitzsimmons. We'll just call him Frank.
Yeah, Frankie.
Frankie boy. So... O'Brien was helping him replace Hoffa. Which is not great. Like, it was almost like he was ready for Hoffa to die.
He was like, come on already. I'm ready for someone else to get
But
there.
at the same time, it was kind of unpredictable when he was going to be getting out of jail. Because the whole stuff with Nixon is a little weird.
Yeah, that whole Nixon thing is like, wait, what the fuck?
And another compelling thing, okay, this is probably not so great, but I can also see this being, like, a sick joke that was taken bad, you know? So, O'Brien apparently threatened to kidnap his loved ones or pull his guts out if he wanted to be president of Teamsters again.
Wow.
Which happened once Nixon got, like, pulled him out of prison.
Yeah, that's not the best,
outlook? Yeah.
That's definitely some evidence stacking against O'Brien.
But, like,
sure.
imagine if you're just with your friends and you're like, oh, man, if he tries to be president again, I'm gonna pull his guts out. And then he dies, and you're like,
And you're like, oh, shit. And the last place he was seen was in a car that you were driving.
Yeah,
you're just like, oh, damn it.
oh,
shucks.
Like, don't play that joke back in court. Like,
Yeah. See, that's why I'm, like, always scared about, like, stuff that I say. Like,
I'm like, scared of him. like, yeah, I'll just kill him for you, you know?
Yeah,
Like, this
oh
is
my
like a
god,
joke.
yeah, it's like a joke, like, oh, do you want me to kill that guy for you? He sounds like a dick. And then, like, years later, that man was, like, murdered, and they're calling you into court.
Yeah.
They're like, so, did you ever say this? And then you're like, it was a joke.
It was a joke. Oh, you find murder funny?
Yo, you find murder funny. It's like, no. God damn. Yeah, I feel like O'Brien for sure had something to do with it.
I definitely think he must have played some role in
Even
it.
if he didn't, like, kill him directly, being seen with him in a car that he was driving, like, as the last place he was seen, and the fact that he literally apparently wanted him to die.
Yeah.
That's some
And
evidence.
was trying to replace him.
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot. But then there was an assassin. I forget his name. I think it's like Kalinsky or something like that. He confessed to it, but I guess he confessed to a lot of crimes before in the past that he didn't do, and he was like, yeah,
I did
Hoffa,
that.
he's in a car somewhere in Japan, and everyone's like, what do you...
He's in a car somewhere in Japan? What?
And, like, he was already arrested, so everyone was like, no. Like, you didn't kill Jimmy Hoffa, like
Maybe
shut
it's
up.
like one of those things, like on Breaking Bad, there was on Better Call Saul, sorry, there was a character that they like paid to like take the rap for a crime. Like, no, it was Breaking Bad, sorry, but yeah, there was a guy who they literally paid to take the rap for, like, I'm not gonna spoil the plot of Breaking Bad, but
spoil it, but like,
you know, this guy ended up taking the rap. They paid him off so that
the mob could have done that. And
so I mean, the mob has money,
and especially because this guy was claiming to have murdered in the past.
Yeah,
like he obviously wants to get arrested.
Maybe he was just a hired like guy to take.
And he had nothing to do with the mob, by the way. Like this guy,
he was just random.
He was just some random assassin. Everyone's like, no, like this has to do with the mob. Like, there's no way it doesn't.
The mob was like, just go out there, tell them you did it, it'll all be fine. And then he went out there and was like, I killed Hoffa. And then everyone was like, no, you didn't.
He's like, but he's in a car in Japan.
And then he turns back to the mafia and they're like, God damn it.
He's
now
like,
what
guys,
are we gonna
tried.
do? I like how we're like talking about the mafia like it's just like one dude. Like,
this is one dude.
The whole mafia, one man. Whose name is for sure Tony. Like,
his name is definitely Tony.
Definitely Tony.
So, okay, so the final kind of theory. It's a bit of a long one. Try to keep up. We're gonna unpack this. So, back in the day, you know how I mentioned that Hoffa first got involved with the mob because he was trying to take out his rivals?
Yeah.
The original man from the mob that he worked with, his name was Sheeran. He was, like, a hitman, and he was gonna, like, take out all those guys for him. The theory is that he betrayed him, and ended up killing him, upon, orders from Russell Bufalino, which is, like, kind of, like, a very high up in the mob at the time.
Yeah.
So, like, the theory of what happened to his body, at least, is that he, like, shot him at an abandoned house, threw his body into the car because there was sense of him being in the trunk at some point.
Ooh.
So, like, that goes against the go-go dancer theory. I'm so sorry, guys.
That definitely goes against the go-go dancer theory and, like, any theory that it was, like, salmon blood in the, in the
any
car.
theory that there was salmon blood. Like, O'Brien tried saying that... O'Brien tried saying that he was delivering salmon that day in the Mercury Marquee, and everyone was like, no, like, everyone saw you guys put Jimmy Hoffa in a car. He's famous. Like,
O'Brien was just like, yeah, don't we just hate it when salmon blood gets in our cars? Jeez.
yeah, like, but...
Yeah, that for sure didn't happen.
Yeah, no. But the theory is that he was shot at an abandoned house by, Sheeran, and then his body was taken to a mafia-controlled funeral home and then was cremated, which makes sense why it was never found.
Yeah.
Sheeran actually confessed due to his guilty conscience, which is kind of interesting because, like, why would you confess because of feeling guilty?
Yeah.
He, like, died pretty quickly after that, I think. I might be wrong. Don't fact check.
No fact checking.
No fact check. I see you. See you typing. But he even named, like, the exact house he was killed at, which they tried to investigate years later, but it was really hard because...
It's years later.
It's years later.
Any evidence that was there is, like, gone now.
But here's the kicker. This theory leads to some interesting discoveries of some tapes. You find out through the tapes that Frank Fitzsimmons, who's the guy who's going to be replacing Hoffa through O'Brien's help, was meeting with President Nixon to get him out of jail.
What?
And paid off Nixon. The mafia paid
the president of the United States
to bail him out of jail. And they're
Holy
actual
shit.
like people that
there's
are like...
There's recordings of this happening.
Yeah, there's recordings of this. And there's documents journaling the $500,000 delivered to Nixon. So that's, like, collusion right there.
What the fuck? I literally didn't know that until just now. That's insane.
That's insane, right? And this was before Watergate, by the way.
Oh,
and, like, they were thinking that Nixon used the money possibly to pay off Watergate as well.
Holy shit. What?
Yeah, it all ties together,
oh my
right?
God.
This theory suggests that Hoffa might have known about the deal with the president and wanted to go public with it because he still was in charge of Teamsters. So, he still had good intentions, generally, but he did have connections to the mob. That would have made Russell Bufalino really uncomfortable at the time.
Yeah.
Because he was so high up, and he was kind of in charge of them, I believe. And at the time of Hoffa's release from prison, Bufalino got wind of 3 mobsters who were supposedly meeting with the church committee, which would lead to a meeting with the CIA. Like, this is confirmed that they were going to be meeting with the CIA, and all 3 of those mobsters ended up dead.
Wow. Yeah, that's some evidence right there.
Yeah, and then in 2013, Tony Zerilli, another Tony.
Of course,
this isn't Tony Pro.
A different Tony.
A different Tony. Keep up. Tips off the investigators to a barn in Michigan, saying his body was buried underneath. They searched toward the barn down, but they couldn't find his body. But this theory has to do with the farm being owned by the mafia, and everyone thinking he was shot and killed there and buried underneath. Or sent in a 55-gallon drum to a mafia-controlled landfill in Jersey, because that was also a thing that they would do.
Yeah. Then, for sure, he would never be found.
But, yeah, I see, the tapes...
Those tapes...
are kind of big. Like,
that's huge. That's, like...
But that was, like, later found. I believe that was found after his presidency ended, so, like...
Well, yeah, it's not like there was anything that you could do at that point.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, well...
It's already, like, over.
Yeah. But that's crazy, because, like, I never knew about that.
Me neither. That's so crazy that, like, there's literally proof that this all happened. And it's just like, well, we can't do anything about it now. Like, everyone involved in this case is, like, gone.
It's, like, it's crazy. Like, I definitely think the tapes play into it, because, like, the theory with it is pretty much that he paid him off to get him out of jail so they could kill him.
So and
then Frank Fitzsimmons could replace him and be in charge of Teamsters, because that's a lot of power to have at the time. Like, it's one of the highest paying positions, and then also Frank Fitzsimmons already had ties to the mafia, so he could keep up the pension fund with them. So that would make sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. More sense than him running off with the go-go dancer.
More sense than him running off the go-go dancer in South America. But we can think that maybe, okay, so maybe he decided to ride in the trunk to South America.
they drove him to South America with salmon. They were gonna have a nice dinner.
And maybe maybe he accidentally cut open his hand or something. Maybe the meeting was
maybe he got a paper cut.
Yeah, paper cut on his passport. Like,
yeah,
it's possible that like Tony Pro and Jackaloni, like, you know, like, just wanted to go to South America with it, but.
Yeah.
Everyone thought that, like, by the way, everyone thought that the whole Jersey thing and them playing cards was, like, kind of weird because, like, look at me. I'm in Jersey right now. Like, dude.
It's like,
it's, like, very, like, they were trying to create an alibi.
It's like it's like if you bought, like, movie tickets and then you just didn't go to the movie so that you could be like, yeah, I was at this movie, I bought tickets.
Yeah.
But then, like, they never saw you go into the theater.
They were like, yeah, we were playing, like, cards in this like, dining hall all day in Jersey.
When it's like...
When it's confirmed he was meeting with them, and like he even called his wife to like say that
he was supposed to be meeting with these people.
Like, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's... Wow. So that was our hometown murder episode.
Yeah, so... In conclusion, maybe he's in South America.
Yeah, in conclusion, maybe Jimmy Hoffa is in South America. Probably not.
I think he's dead.
Yeah, and also in conclusion, Joe Bryan, not guilty of murdering
Tunnel
his wife.
for Joe Bryan.
Tunnel for Joe Bryan. Like, we have, like, a few minutes, so I guess we can try to talk about what next week is going to be about.
Yeah, what should we do next?
Yeah, if you have any suggestions and you know me or Lindsay, you can contact us and say if you want to hear anything specific. We already have plans for a Ted Cruz episode, for sure. We're going to talk about how Ted Cruz is for sure the Zodiac Killer, and how he was born in Canada, and how he's just a awful person.
I also thought it might be fun to talk about Mothman and Mothman sightings for an episode.
Oh, I want to talk about Mothman.
Oh, maybe we can see if there's like an anniversary of a sighting coming up. We'll see.
Mothman anniversary.
The Mothman anniversary.
Yeah, want to talk about Mothman. I want to talk about this weird thing that I remember when I was a kid. I had this book called, like, Scary States of America, and one of the stories in it was from, I think it was from Montana, and it was about these weird cattle mutilations. And there have been, at this point, I think there have been over 10,000 of them, and they've never found out what the fuck is happening. Like, there are these cattle mutilations that are all, like, the same thing is happening, but they just don't know what's causing it. And there are, like, a bunch of theories about, like, what it actually is. So I kind of want to talk about that for an episode, because
we should.
It scares the hell out of me. I see my stepdad chanting Mothman in the comments.
We are gonna talk about Mothman.
For sure. We're gonna for sure talk about Mothman.
I feel like I talk about Mothman every day anyways, so it'd just be me talking.
Yeah.
But, like, for an hour.
God, Mothman. Also,
I don't have to prepare.
Yeah, also... I want to talk about, I know that Shane Dawson did this video, but the Chuck E. Cheese pizza.
We need to talk about Chuck E. Cheese pizza.
We need to talk about the Chuck E. Cheese pizza conspiracy, because holy shit, it goes deep. Oh,
it does
my
go
God.
deep.
It's so crazy.
Maybe we'll make the thumbnail for that episode a picture of, like, the pizza, just so everyone knows what we're talking about.
Yeah, because, man, that
otherwise
Chuck
it'll
E.
have to be
Cheese...
interactive, and you guys will have to type Chuck E. Cheese pizza into your Google search.
Yeah, Chuck E. Cheese pizza. Don't look it up yet. We haven't done the episode about
Don't look up Chuck E. Cheese pizza yet, because we don't want to spoil it. But just don't eat Chuck E. Cheese pizza yet.
Oh God, don't eat it ever.
Just
honestly.
don't eat
just
it
don't
ever.
Eat
but
it.
like, don't eat it.
Yeah. What other things are there? I mean, there are so many, like,
there's so many
things, like Bigfoot.
Jersey Devil.
I want to talk about, oh God, I love the Jersey Devil.
We need to talk about the Jersey Devil, too.
Plus, we're, like, so close. Oh my God, we should do, like, a live episode where we go, like, out into the woods and we stream it. And
we go to Central Park.
No, we should go
we could go to Jersey.
We could go to Jersey. We're literally...
I forgot that we're in New York.
In New York. We can
I forgot I wasn't in Detroit. Or in South America.
The Pine Barrens. Or I think that's where it's, like, where the Jersey Devil is from. We should go to the Pine Barrens and, like, just live stream an episode there.
Yeah, we can live stream... Okay, yeah, we can live stream an episode of us hunting the Jersey
hunting for the Jersey Devil.
I will bring pepper spray.
Yeah, that's gonna help us against a fucking demon.
Hey, you never know.
Maybe.
Wait, can you get pepper spray blessed?
Can we go to a shirt cheer and be like, will you please turn this pepper spray into holy pepper spray?
Holy pepper.
Holy pepper. Okay, well it's been an hour.
It's been an hour.
It's been
Thank
an hour,
you
you
for
guys.
watching.
Yeah, thank you for, listening. But you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, you did watch a screen.
Yeah, you watched a screen, sort of. Yeah, thank you guys for listening. If you listened to the episode that I did last week, obviously this is very different. But I honestly think it's way better than what I did last week.
I'm excited. It's gonna be fun.
I'm super excited. This is stuff that I like talking about already, so
Yeah.
it's like, this is stuff that both of us like talking about, so hopefully it'll be a lot of fun to keep doing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you guys for listening to Monster Mash, and that was episode 1, Hometown Murder. See you guys
See ya.
next week.